It is LUC that inspired me to do this for several reasons. It's the colleagues who are in different ways engaged with Asia as a continent, be it from political sciences or international relations or from more cultural anthropological perspectives. So there's quite a few colleagues here who are engaged with Asian themes. And we're in The Hague, right? There's so many Asian communities in The Hague. And one thing that LUC really tries to do is connect to the city. So if you have a lot of Asia scholars and you have a lot of Asians in the city, it sort of makes sense to see if you can connect the two.
We can create a space for Asian community to voice certain concerns if they have. And we do structure the discussion, of course, but we just wanted to provide a platform for the voices. Not necessarily we will find anything. We've just had a discussion that Asian communities are in the Netherlands observed as non-aggressive, as nice, kind citizens, hardworking citizens.
Well, I do have an Asian background, and on the event page it said that it's more about how you analyze how migration has affected your identity, and I felt that was a very interesting topic, and that's why. And I feel the very aspect of the series that was about testing how Asian are you, like, or basing your identity on your Asian history, something that I find is very interesting.
So in terms of the themes, we try to think of our associations with Asian as a theme, and of course connecting a little bit to our own interests and expertise from the different disciplines and also different personal backgrounds, right? Because we are all, almost all also of Asian descent or have lived in Asia for a long time, like Maya has. Yeah, and that's how we started thinking about these themes, and that's how they came about. What we're going to do is go out there, and there is a test market where the idea is that you go past the different, there's 10 of them, you will get a little answer form, you have gotten a pen at the entrance, indeed, and please take the tests, write down your answers, and we'll come back in here and I'll give you the scores and we'll see how Asian you really are.
The words you typed in, were they more from experience or more from your own perceived notions about being Asian? Who can...
Was het wat je zelf denkt dat het is, of wat je denkt dat anderen denken dat het is?
Ja.
For myself speaking, like coming of Indonesian heritage, growing up in the Netherlands, how important certain symbolic symbols become, like language, like a hierarchy structure and barriers as well. Yeah, religion. How more important those things become once we grow up with two identities, within two worlds.
It's weird for me to understand, am I Asian or am I South American or am I Dutch?
Yeah.
There are like two cultures going between my life with everything actually. So I wonder sometimes, what am I? And especially a lot of people ask me, especially now when I'm applying for jobs, where are you from at the end? I mean, it's nice that they ask, but nowadays I wonder, what shall I answer?
I am the child of an Indonesian mother and a white European father. So I am the classic half and half. But in the words of another famous half and half, Barack Obama, who said, "I'm always half black and never half white."
I see my identity as a world citizen. I'm neither Dutch or Chinese, because I'm not Dutch and I'm not Chinese.
And my work about identity, my purpose is not conform or protect my identity. It's more like I want to destroy this identity.
One thing I found really like interesting was the fact that I'm not the only one who's going through identity crisis. So even second generation, third generation people think of themselves as displaced. They don't feel entirely Dutch, even if they say they're Dutch citizenship-wise. So that was also that was the part which was most interesting.
And quite recently, because this started in 1911, and in 2011, I am touched by the openness of the audience, and of course, there's not everybody shares openly, but also in the smaller sessions that we've had, people share. People really talk about what they are experiencing and how they feel about things. So this is the stereotypical Asian parenting style, the tiger parent who trains the kids relentlessly to be the best that they can at everything.
This particular subject matter of parenting, Asian parenting, was very interesting for me because I was raised with a tiger mother. It really resonated with me because I didn't actually understand that it was also scientifically proven. And to see the statistics and everything, I was like, oh, I'm just like one of many. So it was in a way reassuring, but in a way also confronting and exploring this whole Asian aspect of me. Because being in the Holland and being raised in America, I didn't have that Asian identity, not knowing what really the Asian identity was, except for the parenting. That's what made me Asian. So that was very interesting.
Are you the kind of parent that says, I love you anyway, and
I love you anyway, but I'm strict at the same time.
Okay.
So I think if you say the tiger mom character, it is the strictness and the disciplinary, right? The discipline that you can do everything, but following what I say.
My mother was 90 when she came to the Netherlands, so she was really young, started working in the Netherlands very young. So they wanted to give us every opportunity, just like Judy told, so we can be and do what we want to be.
And did you feel this responsibility to succeed?
I did.
Okay.
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
We know what is happening and what kind of methods maybe we can pick up to help our children in different situations. So at least that's what I did.
I think Asian parents do a lot of sacrifice for their kids, and I think that maybe wasn't reflected in the you felt the effect of it, but it wasn't specifically said but you heard it everywhere, that the parents did a lot of sacrifice in order to make their next generation easier or have more advantages that they didn't have. And you see that in China now. I mean, you see that actually in all of Asia, that the generation before this generation worked really, really hard to have this generation have the luxuries that it does have.
When my son was young, I went to the evening school. Okay. Therefore, I didn't have a lot of time for my son. And my parents, they took care of my children in their time. Yeah.
At all. But actually, the reason which touched me a lot and made me want to change, made me want to marry this guy is because he's smarter. Yeah, because after my parents divorced, Wait and Small, we are starting over like food and...
There's no Asian countries in the top where almost half of the elderly live alone. And all the way at the top, it's like the Eurovision Song Festival. it's pretty much all European countries that have elderly living alone.
The smell of the food, because it reminded me of Grandma's kitchen. Not the Borobudur or Bali, no, it was the smell of the food because it smelled like Grandma's kitchen. And also the laughing of the people getting together. That is also what, you know, we are used to.
Mom, do you know your parenting style make me feel guilty? Because you always love me. But I can't do everything you ask me, so I feel guilty that I disappointed you all the time. Maybe that's also what I need to learn from how to deal with it, and don't let him feel guilty because of my love.
And the first novels I wrote were about immigrants, about being a migrant. So the migrant narrative, it's a very popular narrative because it touches upon this universal theme of sense of belonging. That's why we love it. Because even if you're not a migrant, we all have this issue of sense of belonging.
When you grow up in the West, and for me, I was born in Bangkok and I grew up in Australia. So my awareness of my Asianness, or my Chineseness, or my whateverness didn't really happen until I moved somewhere else that is completely different to where I was born.
But in the other hand, I feel unfair, but in the other hand, no one forced me to stay here. I stay here just because I want to. So I agreed all the conditions that government asked me to do. So I think it's kind of an unfair agreement between me and the country. And I signed it.
For me personally, I always think of Asian expats, for example, like Asian-born American. They have some kind of specific culture or way of looking at things, but Asian in Europe is still kind of really broadly defined, because Europe is also a big continent with different kind of cultures.
Because during my formative years in the 80s and 90s, everyone involved in the arts looking like me was considered an interesting but ultimately negligible exotic. A vibrant supplement to cultural life, but finally no more than a footnote. On TV, guys with hints of my face were either big players or bad guys. Most of the time they were invisible. More than invisible, they were just not there. People looking like me did not raise their voice in the talk shows, didn't dare to draw attention to their talents or insights. Even as a kid, deep down, I felt that the few who managed to pop up on the screen or on a stage or on a museum wall were mostly thankful that they had gotten the job, that they had been included at all. When I grew up, authors with an Indonesian background and brown skin writing stories about colonial heritage and history hardly made the canon. That does not mean that Indonesia wasn't a canonical subject in Dutch literature. You just had to be white when writing about it.
I've always felt kind of lonely as being an Asian in the Netherlands. Also because you have, I had the feeling that I had to play a role that was like, how do you say it? Designed by the West or by the Dutch, if you will.
Since of course I look Asian, I'm not really Asian because I grew up in the Netherlands. Both of my parents are Dutch. They're white actually because I'm adopted from Asia.
The ethnic identity that you explained in the introduction, that helps with like your well-being. How do you feel like society putting your kids in boxes, and how do you as a parent respond to that, and how do you guide them through like finding themselves and defining who they are?
As I tell my daughter, you're special, so you have something to bring.
Then other kids will laugh at him like, oh my God, so fierce. Not nice. Not nice. It doesn't look like and I even brought a chicken heart. It's really nice chicken liver, and they always have problems with that. But I told my son, tell them, try it first, so the fact will tell. And after that, the one kid asked his mom to ask me how to prepare Chinese food.
Nowadays, with under also globalization, where as an Asian I no longer be defined as where my background is. I also watch Western TV series. I also watch Netflix. I also binge burgers. I also go to places that I also go to Disney. I also chat with friends with English. So like, what does it mean to be an Asian in Europe? It's really a good question for me.
I do miss my culture, especially in this process, like maybe all of you. But what I learned in this 15 years is I cannot go back, so I bring my culture back to the Netherlands. You can do that, yeah. And then we are the cultural enricher.
So I think it's good if people understand that even though, like, as a group, Asians in general in the Netherlands is doing really well, doesn't mean that everything what seems like is always perfect. So, because if you talk about the Netherlands, you talk about the minorities, the only focus will also be on the few people who make trouble and make it bad for all the people who are in the same ethnicity and do well. But they forgot there's a huge population who also wants to be seen.
Because there was no mold, there was no path.
The purpose is exactly this. Engage, connect, listen, talk, share, without necessarily having one end product. Well, we're making a documentary, so we are trying to capture what happened, but the main question that the team has been asking themselves is, what happens if you do this? What happens? What comes out of the audience? What happens to us when we're listening to an audience like this, if you talk about themes like this? And that is, I think, the main goal, to figure out what happens when you start engaging with local communities on a particular identity.